I never thought it would happen to me. As a forensic accountant for the Internal Revenue Service in Chicago, my life was built on order, on the predictable flow of numbers and the logical conclusion of a balance sheet. My name is Ethan, I'm 42 years old, and for the longest time my world was a sturdy brick bungalow in Oak Park, a place with good bones and a porch swing where my wife Lena and I would drink our coffee on summer mornings. Our life was defined by comfortable rituals, walking our aging Labrador Max past the historic Frank Lloyd Wright homes that dotted our neighborhood, debating what to watch on Sunday nights, the familiar weight of her head on my shoulder. 18 years. It felt like a geological age, a bedrock foundation I thought was immutable. Our life had a rhythm, a gentle cadence that was as comforting as the hum of the refrigerator in the quiet of the night. But for the last year or so, that rhythm had been off. A dissonant note had crept into the harmony, quiet at first but growing in volume until it was impossible to ignore. I'm a man who finds stories in spreadsheets, who uncovers elaborate deceptions in the tiny discrepancies most people would overlook. It's my job to find the truth buried under layers of lies. And the signs were all there, a trail of doctored receipts leading to a hidden emotional account. It started with her phone, an object that had once been left carelessly on the kitchen counter, open to the world but was now guarded like a state secret. It was always clutched in her hand or placed screen down with a deliberate finality whenever I entered the room. Then came the late-night calls, hushed conversations she would take in the garden, her back to the kitchen window, her voice a low murmur I couldn't quite decipher, but the tone was intimate, conspiratorial. The excuses became more frequent and more elaborate. Weekend trips to wine retreats with friends I'd somehow never met, despite 18 years of shared social circles. A new, almost frantic obsession with fitness bloomed out of nowhere. Our quiet evenings, once spent reading or talking, were replaced by her rushing off to intense workout classes at a trendy new studio in the West Loop, a place with a name that sounded more like a nightclub than a gym. She'd come home late, smelling of sweat and expensive soap, her eyes bright with an energy she no longer shared with me. She started to criticize my life, my work. What was once a source of stability and pride became boring in her new vocabulary. "Don't you ever get tired of just looking at spreadsheets all day, Ethan?" she'd ask, a dismissive edge to her voice. "Don't you want to live a little?" The emotional part of me, the husband who still remembered the woman I'd married, the one who loved my quiet nature, wanted to deny it all. He wanted to believe her flimsy excuses and accept her increasingly distracted kisses at face value. But the accountant in me, the cold, logical professional who had made me one of the best investigators at the Chicago branch of the IRS, could not ignore the data. The debits and credits of our life no longer balanced. My wife was having an affair and she was funding it with our shared life. So with a heavy heart that felt like a block of ice in my chest, I began to prepare. It wasn't a preparation for a confrontation, not yet, it was for a contingency. It was what I did for a living after all. I opened a new file on my secure personal server, a place she didn't know existed, and I named it Project Endgame. I started a private, clandestine audit of my own marriage. Quietly, methodically, I began to restructure our financial world. The bulk of my retirement savings, the investments I'd nurtured for 2 decades, were moved into a newly created protected trust, with my sister in Seattle named as the sole trustee. I set up new, private bank accounts under my name only and rerouted my government paycheck to be deposited there. I left just enough in our joint accounts to cover the mortgage, the utilities, and her escalating credit card bills, enough to maintain the illusion of our shared financial life. And all the while, I documented everything. Every late-night departure was logged in a private spreadsheet, time-stamped to the minute. Every suspicious credit card charge for boutique hotels in the city, for expensive dinners for 2 at restaurants we'd never been to together, was screenshotted, annotated, and saved to a secure cloud drive, each file a small testament to her betrayal. I was building a case against my own wife, and the process felt like hollowing myself out from the inside, leaving nothing but a shell of logic and process. The end, when it came, was as swift and brutal as a car accident. It was a Tuesday morning, one of those perfect late spring Chicago days where the air is thick with the sweet smell of lilac and the promise of summer. I was in the kitchen, the sunlight streaming through the window, pouring a cup of coffee. Max was asleep at my feet, his tail thumping softly against the cabinet in a dream. My phone buzzed on the granite countertop. I picked it up. It was a text from Lena. "I'm done. I've met someone else. I've taken what I'm owed. Don't try to find me." 4 sentences. That's all 18 years were worth. It was so cold, so clinical, it could have been a notice from a collections agency. Not a word of apology, not a flicker of regret. It was an invoice for a life I thought we had built together. I stood there for a long moment, the coffee mug warm in my hand, the world seeming to tilt on its axis. The ticking of the clock on the wall sounded like a hammer. Then, with a steadiness that scared even me, I walked to my home office and logged into our joint bank account. The balance that was there just last night, the $143,000 we had painstakingly saved for a new roof and a long-dreamed-of trip to Italy, was gone. A single wire transfer to an unknown account, the transaction record showing it was executed at 3 o'clock in the morning while I slept just down the hall. A normal man might have panicked. He might have yelled or thrown something or collapsed, but my grief was cold and sharp like a shard of glass. The husband was gone. The accountant had taken over completely. The betrayal was no longer just an emotional wound, it was a financial crime scene and I was the lead investigator. But even in that cold moment, a flicker of the old Ethan remained. A desperate, foolish part of me needed to hear her voice to make her understand the sheer magnitude of what she had just done. I called her number. It went straight to her voicemail, her cheerful, recorded voice a kind of cruel, posthumous joke. "Hi, you've reached Lena. I can't get to the phone right now, but leave a message and I'll call you back." I hung up and called again. Voicemail, my fingers trembling slightly now, typed out a text message. "Lena, we need to talk. 18 years can't end like this. Please call me." I stared at the screen, waiting for the three little dots that would signal a reply. An hour passed, an eternity measured in the slow sweep of the second hand on my watch. Then my phone buzzed again. It wasn't a message, it was a picture. It showed Lena arm in arm with a man on what looked like the deck of a boat, the Chicago skyline a glittering backdrop behind them. He was younger than me, taller, with impossibly white teeth and the kind of manufactured good looks you see on reality television shows. They were both tan, both laughing, raising champagne glasses in a toast to their new life. Lena looked radiant, happier than I had seen her in years. Below the picture, a single line of text appeared. "His name is Chase. And for the first time in a long time, I feel alive. You should try it." That's when something inside me finally broke. Or maybe it wasn't broken. Maybe it was forged in the fire of that casual cruelty into something new, something harder and sharper than before. The part of me that wanted to fix things, to find a reasonable path forward, the part that still held out hope, died in that moment. It was replaced by a quiet, calculating rage. This wasn't about a broken heart anymore. This was about theft. This was about profound disrespect. This was about someone thinking I was a simple, boring fool who could be easily discarded. That night, fueled by a cold fury, I drove downtown. I needed to see them. I needed to see this man, Chase, in his natural habitat. I found his gym, Riker Elite Fitness, in a trendy West Loop loft building. The place was all exposed brick, gleaming chrome and black rubber mats, with deafening electronic music pounding from unseen speakers. It smelled of money and desperation. I saw them through a glass-walled office in the corner, laughing together, heads close. Lena was touching his arm. I didn't hesitate. I walked straight up to the glass door and knocked sharply. Lena's smile evaporated the second she saw my face. Her expression shifted from joy to annoyance. Chase stood up, a human mountain of curated muscle and swagger. He opened the door, blocking the entrance with his body. "Can I help you, man?" he asked, his voice a lazy drawl dripping with condescension. "I'm Ethan," I said, my voice surprisingly even. "Lena's husband." He let out a short, humorless laugh. "Ex-husband, looks like," he corrected me, glancing back at Lena. She stood behind him, her arms crossed defensively. "You shouldn't be here, Ethan," she said, her voice hard. "This is my life now, you need to leave." "Your life?" I asked, keeping my voice low so only they could hear over the music. "The one you're paying for with my money. I believe your text said you took what you were owed. I'd like to see the accounting on that." Chase took a step forward, trying to intimidate me with his size. He was at least 4 inches taller than me, but I didn't flinch. "I spend my days staring down corporate tax evaders and mob accountants. A gym bro with a spray tan didn't scare me." "Look, pal," he said, getting in my face. "Whatever financial stuff you two have is between you. That's over. Lena's with me now. You need to accept that and move on. Don't come here again." They were a team. They had their story straight. They saw me as a speed bump, an inconvenient bit of paperwork from Lena's past that needed to be cleared away. As I walked out of the gym and onto the dark street, the city lights blurring in my eyes, I knew my last foolish attempt at a human connection had failed. They had made it a war. They had declared it with their smug smiles and dismissive words. And they had absolutely no idea who they were fighting. I went home to my empty house, the silence now a roaring presence. I made a fresh pot of coffee, sat down at my desk, and opened the file named Project Endgame. It was time to hit execute. The accountant was now fully in control. My personal audit file was no longer just a collection of sad facts, it was a weapon. The first phase was containment. My plan unrolled with the cold precision of a military operation. At 7:00 a.m. the next morning, I called my personal contact in the fraud division at Chase Bank. I didn't yell or make emotional accusations. I used the calm, professional tone I use at work. "Mark, it's Ethan. I need to report a suspected case of unauthorized access to my joint account. My wife has left me and a large wire transfer was made in the middle of the night. I have reason to believe it was done without my consent." I emailed him the timestamped text message from Lena as preliminary evidence of her intent. "I've taken what I'm owed," I highlighted. The $143,000 transfer was immediately flagged, frozen, and placed under a high-priority investigation. The money was now in limbo, inaccessible to her. Next, I logged into our shared credit accounts. American Express, Visa, the department store cards. One by one, I clicked through the portals, methodically reporting every single card as lost or stolen. Within 30 minutes, every line of shared credit we had was frozen solid. Imagine Lena and Chase at a celebratory brunch. The bill arrives and her platinum card is declined. A small, petty satisfaction, but satisfying nonetheless. Then came the bigger, more strategic moves. My deep dive into their finances, conducted over sleepless nights for months, had uncovered something far more sinister than just her siphoning money from our savings. I had discovered 3 large business loans taken out from different banks over the past 6 months, all in my name, all without my knowledge. She had forged my signature. This was where my paranoia had paid off. Months ago, after a particularly suspicious business trip she took, I had re-angled our home security camera. The one in the dining room, ostensibly pointed at the front door, was now also perfectly positioned to cover the dining table where she always handled her paperwork. I had hours of footage, but I knew what I was looking for. I found it on the recording from a Tuesday night 2 months prior. The video was clear as day. I watched my wife, the woman I had shared a bed with for 18 years, sit at our table and practice my signature on a blank notepad over and over again before carefully forging my name on a thick stack of loan documents. The sight of it made me physically ill, but it was also the cornerstone of my case. I compiled the video clips, the loan agreements I had obtained through record requests, and a notarized affidavit stating I had never seen, signed, or authorized these documents. I sent the entire encrypted package to the head of risk management at each of the 3 banks. I didn't make threats. I simply presented the evidence of fraud committed against their institution. Then came the kicker, the masterstroke, the move they would never see coming. My investigation into Chase Riker had revealed that his entire luxury fitness empire was a house of cards. It was built on a mountain of credit card debt, a string of bounced checks to vendors, and a series of small-time PayPal scams. But his biggest gamble, his Hail Mary pass to solvency, was a $210,000 loan application to the United States Small Business Administration. The application, which I found in a public records database, listed me, Ethan, a federal employee with a sterling credit history and a stable income, as the primary cosigner and financial guarantor. Forging a signature on a standard bank loan is a serious crime. Forging a signature on a federal loan application is a major federal offense. It's the kind of thing that gets you a feature on an episode of American Greed. I didn't need to do anything with this information myself. The government is very good at investigating itself. All I had to do was nudge it in the right direction. I bought a cheap burner phone from a 7-Eleven. I drove to a different neighborhood, and I made a simple anonymous phone call to the public tip line for the Office of the Inspector General. In a disguised flat voice, I reported a suspected case of fraud on a small business administration loan. I gave them the application number and the name Chase Riker. And then I added the piece of information that would guarantee their full attention. I believe the cosigner, a federal employee, may be a victim of identity theft. You should look very closely at the signatures. The wheels of federal justice turn slowly, but they grind exceedingly fine. I had planted the seeds. Now all I had to do was wait for them to grow. 2 weeks later, we were all gathered in a sterile conference room for the court-ordered mediation. Lena arrived looking smug and triumphant. She was dressed in a crisp white designer pantsuit, carrying a $1,000 handbag, her lawyer a shark in a tailored suit by her side. She probably expected me to be a broken man, ready to give her whatever she wanted just to make it all go away. She smiled at me, a tight, condescending smile that said I won. Her lawyer began the proceedings with a pompous monologue about the importance of an amicable split, before launching into Lena's reasonable demands. 50% of all marital assets, including the full value of my government pension, 50% of the house, and a generous ongoing alimony payment to maintain the lifestyle to which she had become accustomed. My attorney, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Sarah, just listened patiently, taking notes. When he was finally finished, she didn't argue or counter his points. She just looked at him and slid a thick 100-page spiral-bound folder across the polished mahogany table. Before we discuss the division of assets, she said, her voice calm and clear as a bell, I think you and your client should review this. Lena's lawyer picked up the folder, a curious look on his face. He opened it. His confident expression slowly began to curdle as he flipped through the pages. There were the detailed spreadsheets, a forensic accountant's masterpiece, tracking every single dollar Lena had secretly funneled from our joint accounts to Chase Riker's failing businesses. There were the bank statements with the suspicious charges highlighted. There were the signed affidavits from the risk management teams at the 3 banks confirming active fraud investigations. And then he got to the last section. He stopped. He stared at a page. It was a crystal-clear, high-resolution still frame from my home security camera. It showed Lena's face illuminated by the warm glow of the dining room lamp, her pen poised over a document, my full name printed clearly at the bottom where the signature was required. That's illegal, Lena's lawyer stammered, his composure finally cracking. That's an invasion of privacy. You can't film someone in their own home. You absolutely can, Sarah countered smoothly, when the camera is installed in plain sight for the stated purpose of home security. The law is quite clear on that. But the admissibility of the video is a minor point. The bigger issue is what the video shows. In this folder we have clear evidence of what appears to be identity theft, wire fraud, and multiple counts of bank fraud. Lena's face had gone the color of chalk. What are you talking about? She hissed at me across the table, her voice trembling. I just met her gaze and held it, saying nothing. And then, Sarah continued as if discussing the weather, there's the matter of the Small Business Administration. She dropped a second, slimmer folder on the table. It landed with a soft, definitive thud. We have reason to believe a federal investigation is already underway regarding a fraudulent loan application filed by Mr. Riker and your client. Forging a federal document, as I'm sure you know, carries a much stiffer penalty than standard bank fraud. The room was utterly silent. You could have heard a pin drop. The trap so patiently set had sprung. Lena's options, her entire future, had just shrunk to zero. Her lawyer was frantically whispering in her ear, his face pale, likely explaining the concepts of mandatory minimum sentences in federal penitentiaries. Sarah laid out our offer. It was not a negotiation. It was a list of terms for their unconditional surrender. To avoid me pressing personal criminal charges, and more importantly, to avoid me offering my full and enthusiastic cooperation to the federal investigators, Lena would sign a settlement agreement today. In it, she would assume full sole responsibility for every single dollar of Chase Riker's business debts, and every penny of the fraudulent loans she had taken out in my name. She would forfeit any and all claim to my assets, my government pension, my private retirement accounts, and any form of alimony now and forever. The court would award me the marital home, free and clear of any claim from her, and I would retain sole ownership and custody of our dog Max. She sat there, her perfect designer facade crumbling before my eyes until there was nothing left but a terrified, trapped woman in an expensive suit. She picked up the pen. Her hand was shaking so badly she could barely sign her name. 3 weeks later, I heard through a mutual acquaintance that Chase Riker had disappeared. His gym was shuttered, a closed for business sign taped to the glass door. His flashy Instagram account was deleted. His phone was disconnected. He had ghosted her, leaving Lena to face the music alone, buried under more than $400,000 of debt, and with a looming court date with the United States government. She had lost everything because she thought she could take everything from me. As for me, I sold the bungalow in Oak Park. Chicago held too many ghosts, too many memories. The echo of my footsteps in the empty rooms was the only sound. I packed my belongings, put Max in the passenger seat, and drove west. I watched the flat plains of the Midwest give way to the mountains and then the sea. With my sister's help, I found a small house in a quiet Seattle neighborhood and used my now unencumbered assets to start my own boutique forensic accounting firm. I was my own boss now. My very first client was a woman who was divorcing her husband, a flashy crypto bro who claimed to be broke but whom she suspected was hiding millions in a maze of digital wallets and shell companies. As I sat in my new, bright office, the fresh, clean scent of the Pacific in the air mapping out the intricate web of his financial deceptions on a whiteboard, I felt a genuine smile spread across my face for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. It wasn't a smile of revenge, it was deeper than that. It was a smile of profound relief, of absolute release. I hadn't just escaped the trap Lena and Chase had set for me. I had taken it apart, piece by piece, screw by screw, and used the raw materials to build myself a new, stronger foundation. And that's when I learned some betrayals can never be forgiven, but they can be the very thing that sets you free.